What's up, everybody? Thanks for stopping by. Uh, Today's episode, or this week's episode that I'm releasing, is with my friend Pam Topjian. And Pam has a website called hypnobreakthrough.com. Pam is a hypnotherapist, and she's also friends with one of my former guests on the show, LC, who runs this Recovery Soul Food podcast. And so I had Pam on the show because she started watching my show when I was doing my live streams, and she got into the show, and I decided to have her on as a guest because the hypnotherapy was kind of an interesting thing for me. I actually tried a 15-minute session with her and wasn't successful, not because of her, but just me thinking too much. That doesn't seem to work well with you're supposed to let go and just give in to or surrender to the process or to the whatever it is you call it. And it didn't work for me. And I'll try it again. I'll try anything again. Don't try anything twice. Um, but yeah, it's a great episode. Do me a favor and check it out. I'm doing this part right here because I switched over to Anchor a while back, and in Anchor, you can't if I want to upload the video and the video goes straight over to Spotify, it doesn't allow me to do anything else with it because it strips the audio out, but it doesn't allow me to add anything to that audio when it goes over to Anchor. And so I have to do this first and add it into the video. And then I can upload it and it'll strip all this stuff out. And so if you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms or players, I want to be able to get into this part where I can contextualize a little bit about, what's going on and to update. We're getting close to the holidays. And for those of you who've been following the show and are fans of the show and enjoy what I'm doing and putting out there, thank you. I appreciate it. Honestly, it means a lot to me. Also, too, happy holidays. If I don't publish anything else, which could be possible, I'm working full time again now. So thank God for that. I was starting to stress out a little bit, man. Shit was getting tight around here. I mean, it still is tight, but I mean, it was like I'm thinking, fuck, what can I sell? Can I sell my ass? Can I sell this? How much can I get for that? You get into that mode of like, what can I do to plug the holes of this ship that's getting ready to sink? So good news on that front. Things are starting to look a little bit better on the financial situation, so that's one less thing I have to worry about. Although I did, I was sick with COVID last year this time, and I got sick again the same time, and so I'm fighting a cough. You probably hear it in me, and I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying to deal with that too. So this conversation, we started out with my normal, conspiracy type shit ish. And then we got into her story. And then after that, we got into a discussion about a transgender discussion. And that was interesting. Um, I don't, I, you know, in my opinion, you can do whatever you want. I don't really care. If you're gay, you're lesbian, you're trans, you're whatever the hell it is that you are, and if that makes you happy, by all means, keep doing it. My only problem is when it starts to spill over into like making me have to do more than that, do more than just be okay with you doing whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't affect me or doesn't hurt anybody else. I don't care. But when you start imposing things like I have to change my language in order to appease you, or I have to be okay with my daughter being taught about these things by a school and not by me. And when me and her mother are ready for her to be exposed to that, you know, I don't think it belongs in the schools. I think it belongs nowhere else but with the parents. And so those views are troubling to some people. And those views sometimes get you canceled just for even wanting to have the conversation. I've gotten into it with some trans folks on Clubhouse, just by asking simple questions that they don't have an answer for. But what the answer they do have is usually going for personal attacks. This individual went onto my Instagram account, which is, I don't no longer have that one because it got hacked, but she went onto the Instagram account, started looking through my Instagram, and then saying that my daughter's ugly or you know what I mean? Just going to get personal attacks. It's like, okay, you can't answer my question, so you want to attack me personally, so that's somehow going to derail the conversation and make you look better. As a matter of fact, it makes you look stupid when you do that because you're deflecting and you're not following the facts and you're just basing you have baseless shit. So, and that was just with this individual, and then I also have a trans sibling who, I'm not really on speaking terms with right now, and it has nothing to do with her lifestyle choices. It has more to do with now, anyways, that's really not about this. This is about this is about the conversation that I had with my friend Pam. And we did get into some talk, a transgender talk, and I thought it was a good conversation. And two people who aren't, but know people that are. So yeah. As far as however else I feel, if you want to know, go over to my Anchor page, ask me a question. I have a voicemail there. You can voicemail me and tell me all about how you think maybe I'm wrong, or that my views are horrible, or that maybe I'm a transphobe, or I'm a racist, or maybe I'm a right-wing nut job. I've been called that too, even though I'm not Republican or Democrat. I can't stand either side. So I don't know. I'm just a curious person who has questions and is not afraid to ask them and is not afraid to tell you exactly how I feel about it. If you want to cancel me, feel free, go for it. It's I've been to prison. I've kept myself in prison. I've been in prison, even out of prison. So just you can't do anything to me if you really wanted to, even if you wanted to. And if you did, I really wouldn't fucking care. So that's the difference. In order to cancel somebody, the person has to give a shit about if you're going to try and cancel them to begin with. And that I don't, because I'm nobody. I'm just a guy that has a big mouth sometimes and has a podcast and, went through some shit, has a pretty big story of what I went through in my past and how I got to where I am now. But I mean, aside from that, I'm just trying to navigate this shit just like the rest of you. We're in some crazy ass times. And I mean, that's about all I can say. There's just some crazy shit going on that we got to sort through as a society and figure out, what the fuck is up and what's down, what's right, what's left. Because everything is opposites right now. And that's really what it seems like. And I feel that all the time in a lot of different spaces that I go through and go into. So anyways, I didn't mean to derail this into like a rah 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 rah. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the episode and the conversation because I did having it and I did enjoy listening back to it. So with that being said, keep it 100, stay true to yourself because everything else is just noise. What's up, everybody? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. All right, got another good interview for you this evening, and it is evening. It's 6:00 on Monday, January 10th, 2022. And I have for you, the listeners, Pamela Topjian. And Pamela is a good, she's a fan of the show. That's where I first met her from. And then I had another individual on my show, Lona Curry, and she was definitely she's was friends with him, and it was it just kind of went from there. And then she does hypnotherapy. She's also got a story to share for us, a little bit of backstory and kind of how she got to where she is. And she wrote a book, which I'm jealous because I don't have no book. I think about writing a book all the time. I just never get around to doing it. Maybe one of these days, though. So when I come back from the uh, intro, we'll be talking with Pamela. In the meantime, if you're getting anything out of this show, do me a favor, share, like, do all the things that you got to do. I'm not really that big into promoting and all that stuff. If you find the show, you find the show. Hopefully, if you have found the show, you're enjoying the content that you're getting. And do me a favor, give it a like, share it. If you want to help support the show monetarily, that always helps too. There's plenty of ways to do that, and it'll be all in the show notes or the description of this. And yeah, when we come back, we'll talk to Pamela Topjian.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
Hey, Pamela, how's it going?
Hi.
Thanks for
Good to be
coming
here.
by and hanging out.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you so much. Like you said, I've been a fan of the show for a while. And one thing that I want to say is, again, in your intro, that I heard, if you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. And that's what really drew me to your podcast, is just how open you were and how, willing you were to be vulnerable. And that was just really struck me as something different from a lot of others that I've seen. So I want to
Well,
thank you
thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I think, we're lacking that quite a bit in
Mhm.
society, in our systems, in our governments. I mean, if more people
Absolutely.
were transparent and authentic and, truly doing things in light instead of darkness,
Right.
we would be in a completely different place.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And hopefully, I mean, as people are waking up, slowly but surely, I notice it all the time. People that I thought were over here are now starting to trickle over here because,
Yeah.
things just don't make sense, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
get into any of that. You
Right.
can,
But
I'm
yeah,
sure.
it's a dividing time. It's a confusing time these last few years for sure.
Yeah. And, my family is split apart because of it.
Mhm.
And, it, it's what they want. It's easier to, when you divide, it's easier to conquer,
Mhm.
and it's always been about that. Even when they talk about racism and all this other stuff, it's never been about racism. It's always been
Right.
about classism. They just hide classism behind racism.
Yeah. Well, there's so
And
much into it. Yeah, it's a rabbit
yeah.
hole for sure.
So, anyways, that's not why we're here. We're we're here to talk about you and a little bit of your backstory and how you got into hypnotherapy. That's an interesting thing. I mean, I tried to do it once for 15 minutes and
Right.
but it's yeah, there was so much going on around me that I couldn't even concentrate. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I'm a good candidate for that, because really have to be a candidate to be hypnotized, right?
Well, it's not necessarily about concentrating. In fact, that might be the problem. It's more about letting go, more about not. concentrating. Just
Then
letting
that would make
go and letting the facilitator guide you.
well,
So,
then that would explain a lot because I'm a control freak
there
and,
you go.
like, I have to be in control of, like, a lot of different things, and
Hmm.
it's annoying,
Yeah.
to me, and it's annoying to the people around me sometimes too,
Yeah.
when, noticing that, but, I'm getting better, ish.
Control freak, maybe, leadership skills, right?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, I've always been a leader, I just led people in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not a good thing,
No.
they have places for people that like to do that.
Right.
So let's get a little bit back into your backstory and let everybody know who's Pamela Topjian and why did you write a book and what are some of the things that you had to deal with? I mean, was there ever a place that you found yourself in your life with nowhere to go but up?
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely. So, like you said, my name's Pamela Topjian. I am in Northern California, and I am married for the third time to a more loving, respectful relationship after two toxic and abusive husbands. And I had a lot of childhood trauma growing up, which included neglect and date rapes and sexual assaults and losing a sibling to a car accident and just moving around a lot. And we were evicted a lot because of the poverty and the moving all around a lot and all of that. So I didn't get any kind of therapy until I was 50. And I didn't realize until that time how much my childhood had influenced the rest of my life, which also kind of continued on why I was in those toxic relationships and not really being able to stand up for myself or feeling like I had any say in my life or anything. So that's what led me to, well, first of all, I should say that I'm a licensed nurse that changed careers to hypnotherapy. And so I went into nursing. I've always been somewhat, I've been helping people a lot throughout my life as much as I could. But with nursing, it was just too, I don't want to bash the whole career or the whole field or anything, but a lot of changes need to happen. And not only was I burning out after being in the marriage that I was, with that husband who was, he was a drug addict, he was an alcoholic, he was abusive, and in and out of psych wards and everything. And also, I was doing 16-hour shifts in nursing. So it was just too much. So, but between that and between wanting to do something that felt more real in the way of healing, I went to a holistic healing course, which is where I found hypnotherapy, and that was 2010. And that's where I started with hypnotherapy. But I didn't really start doing it full time until the pandemic, until 2020. So I went for more education and became certified. And I realize now that everything that I've been through from 2010 to 2020, having that abusive husband, getting away from that, and going through therapy myself after that breakdown, after during that time, has made me a better hypnotherapist than I would have been had I been able to start in 2010.
Mhm.
So as far as the breakdown, whereas I had nowhere to go but up, was after I left that second husband, the one that was physically abusive and the one that was a alcoholic, drug addict, and everything. Um, After I left him, I thought, "Oh, good, I'm free. I'm living on my own. This is going to be awesome." But I guess it was PTSD, which I didn't realize at the time. And at the time, also, I didn't even factor in my childhood trauma into what was going on within me. But I just really crashed. And I was suicidal. I was fearful all the time. I had night terrors and everything. And I could barely function. And so that was my really low point. And that's when I was living in Missouri. And that's when I got on a bus with a one-way ticket for a 3-day ride from Missouri to California. And and since then,
Why California?
I don't know really. I never thought about living in California, but I have always hated the snow. And I lived in Upper Michigan for 15 years. And I actually had a friend in Missouri who was thinking of doing the same thing and suggested, "Why don't we go to California?" And so when I mentioned to my landlord that I may be leaving before the end of the lease and talking to them about that. And this was the end of June or middle of June, and they said, "Can you be out in 2 weeks?" I was like, "Well, I'll try," and I did. So I sold everything, gave everything away. I I got a bus ticket. I found a way to, I was doing house sitting jobs and pet sitting jobs and caretaking jobs and things like that. So I could come here and do something without having to have a bunch of money right away to, have my own apartment and everything. And I wasn't even sure I was going to get back into nursing at that point, but I knew that if I needed to, it would be really easy to get a nursing job here. And this is before the pandemic.
Hmm. Yeah.
So this is 2016, I believe, when I got on that bus. But a funny story from the bus. Um, so I was really pretty numb. I was like, I had been suicidal. I had been very fearful. I was just not myself. I didn't really care about myself. I thought, well, if something happens to me, what do I care? I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. This was kind of a last ditch effort. And so I get on the bus and I just sit in front and I know I've got a long ride ahead of me. So this person comes on the bus. They look almost homeless and, just really disheveled and kind of dirty. And they were jabbering away. And I was just like, smiling nicely. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to, be mean or anything. So I just was smiling nicely and nodding at them. And he had a water bottle and he spills it on my seat. And there was alcohol in the water bottle.
Uh,
And so I'm like, I can't believe it. Why me? I leave this alcoholic, I think everything's going to be great, but I crash, I'm just at the lowest point of my life. And, um, and then this person sits next to me and spills their drink on me the first day of the bus ride, of 3-day bus ride. So
uh,
I know, I know. So I stand up right away because my seat's all wet, and this man starts rubbing on my rear end to trying to get the wet off or whatever he was trying to do. So just like, are you kidding me? I could not believe it. It's so funny, but at the time it was just like unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it.
like,
So
what else
anyway,
can go wrong?
right, right. What else? Let's just crash. Um, so we went to a stop and I had to ask the bus driver if I could get my suitcase because they had said that, in the beginning when they were putting the stuff in, they said, you can't get your things. So whatever you need to carry on with you because we're not letting people go in, to the luggage area under the bus until your final destination. So this was my first day and I had 3 days, and so I had to plead with them to let me, and I told them what happened, and you could see the back of my jeans were all wet, and then so he let me and I was able to change, but they didn't let the guy back on the bus either. And it was a little bit empowering, and I kind of feel like this is part of the very beginning of why that happened, being able to see why things happened. Was I had to say something. I cared more about me than I did that person.
Mhm.
And so that was the first time probably that I kind of stood up for myself, you know. So so that's kind of a funny story.
Yeah, that would suck on the first day of that. It's like, "Jeez," but, yeah, whatever can go wrong sometimes will.
Yeah, yeah. So then, it's kind of like, so then when I got here and I started doing a few, like I said, caretaking jobs, pet sitting, house sitting, all of that, I still was very, anxious, very still suicidal and everything. And I went to started therapy then, and I was able to not have to go punch a clock and be in any kind of a job that was going to be dangerous for other people, um, or have to even deal with people, very much anyway. And so when I went for therapy, that's when I heard the words, neglect, PTSD, CPTSD, and I was really surprised that was describing me. And I had no idea at that point. When I went for therapy, it was because I thought, why am I so anxious? Left this man. I'm no longer in danger. Why am I suicidal? Why am I doing all this when I should be feeling, top of the world now? And that's why I went for therapy. And then it turns out that's when I found out all this childhood stuff really related to the rest of my life and why I was crashing now. And so to me, that was way too late to find that out, to realize all this stuff. And so that's part of why I do what I do, you know, because a lot of that childhood trauma stuff is what people get stuck in life from, and a lot of people don't even realize it, and they get stuck and they stay there and they just can't move forward, or they stay in these abusive relationships, or they turn to substance abuse, and or self-harm, or
Mhm.
or they are contemplating suicide and that. And so I just want people to realize that no matter what you're going through or what you have been through, you can go on to really live your dream, really. I mean, and to me it's been so amazing. Like, I can't even believe it that I'm just like checking off my goals, living my life, more than I could have ever imagined, just reaching my dreams. And it's almost too amazing to be true.
Yeah.
So that's why
You
I
pinch
wrote my book.
yourself and you're like, "Hey, is this real?
Exactly,
Am I really
exactly.
here?"
Right. And that's part of the book, is like, that's like solidifies it. It's like, yeah, look, this is my life, and this is what happened, and this is where I am now. And so that's part of why I wrote that book. It's like, it is like pinching myself to have that physical, to have it all down, and to have, not gone to the grave without getting it all out there,
Yeah.
and also to, have, um, to have something that might inspire others, people that might not know me or might not, go for hypnotherapy. It might be a good inspiration for somebody to know that it can and it does get better. No matter, even if you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, or however old you are, it's not too late, not too late to change
Yeah.
your life totally around. So,
You
yeah.
know, what's crazy is that it seems like the first half of our lives is filled with, the trauma and struggle and strife and bad decisions and,
Mm,
what comes from that. And then we spend the second half of our life trying to recover from that,
right, right. I
and
almost
learning how to live.
Right. I almost titled the book that the first 50 years are just practice. That was the other title I was kind of going with, because I started writing it when I was 50 and I'm 55 now. So it took 5 years in the writing to get from start to publishing. And so yeah, that was one of the titles I was thinking of. So yeah.
That's a long process. So how long did it actually take you to write the book?
Well, like I said, 5 years. So, but I did sometimes, you know, put it away for a little while. It was very emotionally taxing, of course. Um, It was very, sometimes I didn't remember things, and some people would tell me, people tell me now that I could never remember all that, and I thought about that with other books that I read, other sort of life stories and memoirs that I've read. I thought, how could you remember all that? Um, but as you write it, you remember, like as you're going through, if you're at a point, if you're going kind of chronologically, like I did, you come to a point that you're like, what happened there? Or, I'm not sure, I just, you can't pinpoint things. So you either ask friends or family members, or you just put it away and you just kind of contemplate it for a while, or you leave space and then you go on, but it comes to you, and if it doesn't, there's still enough there that you don't have to add it. But
Yeah.
yeah, and one thing that was really interesting to me, that there was a time, well, two times, but one thing, my sister, I said something about when my sister, our oldest sister, had passed away in a car accident, and I said something to my other older sister, who was the middle child, about remembering something around that time or before that time. And she said, weren't you in foster care? Didn't she, her exact words were, didn't mom farm you out? Which to me was like, that's such weird wording. How could you say that?
Farm
But,
you out.
but she said, she thought I wasn't even there, which to me was like so telling, because like I was so far removed from my sister's lives, because I was 4 years younger than the middle child, 5 years younger than the oldest child. And I was just so alone all the time. And they were teens when our parents divorced, and I was young. And so they went off and did their thing. And I was alone a lot of the time, most of the time, and hungry most of the time. And and they weren't even aware that I was around,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But another thing, um, oh yeah, so another thing, I think I'm talking about the memory. So as I'm writing the book, I was up to the point of the second marriage, and I knew this was going to be a hard one, because I was still having like nightmares occasionally, and still being triggered by things occasionally, even though I had been through therapy. Um, so So as I was writing it, I was up to that point of like the time before I left. Like that's when he physically attacked me and I was knocked unconscious and everything. And I didn't really remember exactly what happened that night, just exactly what happened. I remembered bits of it. So then as I'm writing this, and I was up to that point and it was really difficult, that night I had a nightmare, and I got up, and it was like the middle of the night, and I got up and I started writing, because it was all coming back to me. I started writing, writing, writing. I was like, just, with just handwriting, just got up and wrote it all out, and then, went back to bed. And in my book, I have, a page or a page and a half of what I wrote exactly word for word that night in the middle of the night.
Mhm.
So it all came back to me. And I had been having, like I said, I've been having some nightmares up to that point, but I was also having like flashbacks. It was like even in the middle of the day, it was like I could remember, being hit on the head, or remember, laying on the closet floor, and him kicking me and stuff. And it's just like a flash, just like they said, a
Mhm.
flashback. And I never had anything like that before, and it was very like, wow, it was like I even had it driving, had that happen to me driving. So that's, you remember things. It might not always be the best, but you remember it as you write it out.
Now, having remembered it and, being triggered like that, I imagine that it had to be somewhat healing in the same sense.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another thing, people say, I don't want to remember it all. I don't want to go through all that again. But they did want, people want to write their story, but they are scared of having to go through that all again, which is understandable. But
Mhm.
oh my gosh, it's so healing. I did go through therapy, but writing the book to completion has been really, really therapeutic in itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You get it out of yourself, and it's like, okay, now it's down. Now it's down. Now it's in, it's tangible. It's here. It's written out. It's not like I have to remember so that, you know, You want to remember so you don't repeat things, or you want to remember in case you're ever, asked or anything. Or I have two adult children, and they don't know the whole of my life story.
Mhm.
Um, but and they're iffy on even reading it. But they know all about it. They know that I've written it and everything. Um, and all the names are changed in the book, even my own. Even though I have, the author name is my own name, it's not a pen name, so anybody that knows me would know who the people are, but
Mhm.
anybody else wouldn't. So, but yeah, so then you have it all down, sort of like, so if I ever have any grandchildren, or even way down the road, it can be like, my great 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 grandma, this is her story, this is what she had been through, and look, she made it out, and so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, it feels like now it's all there, so you can kind of get it off of your chest, and out of the back of your mind a little bit, because it's all there now. So it's very
Yeah,
healing.
you're taking it out of yourself and you're putting it into something else and
Yeah.
releasing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a release. Absolutely.
You're releasing it to the world and saying, "Yeah, now it's your problem."
Right. Now it's your problem. You deal with it.
Um, that's awesome, man. So what's the name of the book?
It is, I didn't come this far to only come this far. And I have it in
I
front of me here.
I didn't come this far to only come this far.
Yeah.
Nice. So you is this gonna be in an audiobook too?
I would like to have it in an audiobook. It is
If you
on
do,
Kindle.
I'll narrate it for you.
You will.
Yeah.
It's a woman's story, but
Oh, yeah, you might need a woman to do that, huh?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get into doing, audiobook
Yeah.
narration.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
great idea. You've got a great voice for it,
yeah, I
for
think
sure.
so. I think,
Yeah.
it can be very melodic and,
Mhm.
whatever.
Strong voice, yep.
But the funny thing is that narration is more acting
Mm,
because you have to move with the story and the
yeah,
different intonations and, voila,
yeah.
whoa, ah,
Yeah, to go along with the emotions of it, yeah, I didn't think about
so
that. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a little bit different. See, but I mean, it's definitely something I can do. I've been mimicking people my whole life, ever since I was in school.
Yeah, right.
So that'll work out fine. Um, so tell me a little bit about this. You got the book, you wrote
Mhm.
that, and you're also doing something with Lona Curry, right?
Yeah,
From the
yeah.
podcast. What's his podcast?
Well, he has Recovery Soul Food, and he also has Transgender Mentor, so he's a busy
Okay.
guy too, like you. And he works,
Yeah, two. I
so,
could
and he's
imagine doing two.
I know. And on his Recovery Soul Food, his first one, he just started season 4, and the first one back, he had Tommy Chong on. So that's
Really?
awesome. So yeah, you need to go watch that.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you manage that one?
Well, he is on a project with Eric McCoy, where they do, what is that one called? Walk a Mile in My Shoes, I think it is, or
Okay.
Official Walk a Mile, or something like that, with Eric McCoy, who also has a few podcasts. But But so they had Tommy Chong on there, and so then from there, Lona was able to get him on Recovery Soul Food. It was really
That's
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He's
So,
an interesting guy.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So he's transgender male, and he has transgender mentor. He does, group coaching and speeches and sensitivity training and stuff like that as well. But we had talked on Recovery Soul Food. We are great friends. We talked a lot otherwise, and he asked me to be on Transgender Mentor as, a cisgendered female, a little older too, so that more people my age might be drawn to it, to know, if you had two people that were transgender on there, the general public might not be as open to watching it,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
listening in. So kind of to have an alternative perspective there, or an alternate perspective there. So, and we really get along really well, and so I started co-hosting with him, and we're on every Sunday on Transgender Mentor. Sundays at 8 Eastern, and it's on YouTube, and it's also on Anchor, Spotify. Um,
So
but from
is
that,
it a live stream?
it is. He does it
Okay.
live. Yeah, yeah.
I used to I used to do it live, and it just
I
seemed it's really difficult to set that up because you got to have all of the description and everything else, and then the picture, all
Yeah.
that stuff for mine like
Hmm.
had to be done, and it's like God, I just don't know where I can squeeze all this in at, and so
Yeah.
I found myself constantly having to do it at the last minute, and it's just like, you know what, this is too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I think though, if you think about any editing that you're doing, and depending on the guest, I'm sure whether you have much editing or not really, but all the work you put into it after the recording is, might be equal to what you did, if you had it live. But
But
yeah,
I but
I don't know.
that's on my time. So
Hmm.
that's where the difference is. It's like,
Yeah.
when like if we scheduled, I had 2 of these, so I would have
Hmm.
to build 2 descriptions and all of that, and then
Right.
put and schedule them in. And so
Yeah.
it, that takes sometimes it takes up to like, if to do 2 of them probably would be, it's about 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like
Jeez.
getting
Yeah.
all of everything that I want to say on there, making sure everything's good. All the links are,
Yeah.
line up to where they're supposed to go. And then,
Yeah.
there's just, I don't know. I, I need more time. I need
Yeah.
more hours.
Yeah.
I need more hours in the day.
Right, right. Yeah, and I've done a few podcasts, and I'm, the co-host with him, but I've never, been on that side of it, and I don't want to be. So it's not something that I, have
You're
any
not missing
aspirations to
anything.
do. There's
You're
so
not
many out
missing
there.
nothing.
I know
Uh,
it's a lot of work, and it's kind of a tireless job, but
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I literally I have so much content that I haven't even put out
Yeah.
from a year ago,
Mhm.
that just never got into. And the funny thing is that it's still relevant today,
Yeah,
because
good, good.
the stuff we were talking about back
Mhm.
then was the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, 2 years later and we're still here.
Still here, yeah. That
On the
might make
brink
it
of
more
going back
interesting,
to
though.
yeah, right, on the brink of going back to March of 2020,
Yeah.
depending on what state you're in.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, yeah, for sure, it's, definitely interesting, but, I definitely don't have a I'm not lacking content, let's just say that. It's just I'm
Right,
lacking
right,
time to produce it.
right, right. Yeah. So with working with him, one of the things that really struck me that I learned is that the children, so people that are under 25, the ones that um, attempt suicide or are victims of suicide, most of them are from the LGBTQ community. And out of all of them, most of them are transgender. So these are the people, the youth, that are having the highest rates of suicide. So that really struck me, and how important this was, and how so many people don't know that. And then there's the Trevor Project, which is like a suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth. And I started to do some training with them to do the crisis hotlines with them before the holidays. And then I ended up going to see my mother, and I wasn't able to finish that. And so I asked them, would I be able to pick up after the holidays? So they said the end of January I could pick up again where I was. So, so I'm still in the training for that. So I'm not doing that yet. But because of all of that, I'm starting in that as well. So it has
So
been
why
really a
do
big
you
impact.
why do you think that is? I mean, what do you think is driving that?
Well, because a lot of parents don't really understand. A lot of parents will kick people out once they say, children, children meaning teens, but even like, 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds have tried to, attempt suicide because they don't feel whole within themselves. They don't feel like themselves. It's hard to imagine, you know, that you don't feel like you're the person you see in front of the mirror, you know. Like I'm very comfortable being a female. I always have been kind of a girly girl, but you know, I can't imagine not feeling, other than the time that I felt numb and just, not really existing, or wanting to exist. But imagine feeling like that as a kid, and everybody's calling, telling you to wear dresses, trying to have you play with dolls and and asking you about boyfriends when you're not at all interested in boys, and you hate your body for turning into a woman, or a male for that matter, a man. Um, I can't imagine having that feeling. And then parents that don't understand and think it's a phase or want you to get therapy or trying to even, a lot of these kids are subject to abuse, or even sexual abuse, where, people can be really harsh and you think they get beat up, or in the teens it's like you think you want to be with, you think you want to be a woman, or I'll show you what a woman is, or just really terrible, terrible things that these people go through. So that's why, you know
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't remember a time in the past where that was a prevalent thing. Like you didn't like young kids like that would, I mean, that's like you don't hear about that. You know what I mean? It
right.
doesn't it's and so I mean, what's the correlation? Is it social media? Is it I mean, there's a
I
because
think it's internet.
I know for girls, there at the time there was a correlation around the time that the smartphone came out was around that's when suicides in young girls rose right around that time
Wow.
when both of them, you know what I mean? So it had to
Mhm.
be the smartphone and social media play a part
Right.
in that. But I mean,
Bullying.
yeah, yeah, bullying too. And so yeah, I mean, I have a trans sibling and
Hmm.
I it's not so much that I don't understand it. I get it. It would
Yeah.
be a lot easier if if just gay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it
It's easier to understand different attraction, but transgender doesn't have to do with attraction.
mm,
You can be transgender and know it before you have any interest in any sexual interest in anybody or romantic interest in anybody. And it's more about your own body and aligning your mind and your heart and your soul with what is on the outside.
yeah,
That's more transgender. Whereas, the other, LGB, Q, I guess, um, all have to do with who you're attracted to, more or less. And a lot of transgender people doesn't necessarily mean you are attracted to the same sex or the opposite sex. They can also be, you know, gay or lesbian, or but that transgender sort of, that's the label, and it doesn't have anything to do with who they're attracted to. And you mentioned that you kind of understand with your sibling, but I think that just like giving birth, just like being truly in love, just like pain, things you can't fully understand unless you live it. So, you know, we can't we can't fully understand that unless we know it from within ourselves. Even if you're, great friends with transgender person, or you have a transgender family member or loved one, you might understand to the as much as you can, but you can't really
yeah.
fully understand until you're in it, until it's part of you, and if it's not, then it's not.
And there's also, differences in like how far you go with it too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Do you go and you get the operation and you know
Hmm.
go? I mean, are you committed? That's how I look at it as.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If this is where you're gonna go,
Hmm.
then by not going all the way, you're how committed are you?
I think it has to there's a couple things about that. With first of all, a big issue is money for a lot of people,
Mhm.
and it's not just one surgery. It's not just either top or bottom or both. There's a lot of surgeries involved with, changing your whole body to the other gender. There's a lot of surgeries involved. And it costs a lot of money, and some insurance pay for some of it and some of them don't pay for any of it, and that's a big issue. Um, but another thing is, I think that there are non-binary folks that, there's all these labels, and it's hard to know. I mean, I think so, with the example of, male, female to male. So if you have, if you first are, you're female, you're attracted to women, but you don't really feel like you're a part of the lesbian community, then you kind of realize, oh, there's this transgender thing. I definitely feel more male. I identify more with males, and I feel more male. And take hormones is like the first thing people do, or they start dressing more, and integrating with that gender community. um, so
And that's
it,
that's a
what it
cross dresser, right?
Well, I guess it I guess it would be considered a cross-dresser, except for these people don't feel like they're not fully a woman, or they're not fully a man, so they don't feel like they're cross-dressing. They feel like they had been cross-dressing before, you know.
Huh.
But if you
So
if you
confusing.
taking some hormones, and you start integrating into the community, um, of mostly cisgendered, whatever gender you feel more aligned with within yourself, um, that could feel like enough for you to feel, okay, now I feel much better about myself. I feel much more like I know myself. And it doesn't necessarily mean I need to have, bottom surgery or top surgery or whatever. There are transgender males that have given birth because they still have the uterus, they still have the vagina, they still have all those female organs, but they still feel more male, and they will take male hormones except for, bless you.
Thanks. I had to put the mute on. No, it's a cough
Good
that
job.
won't. Yeah, it's the cough from getting
Mm,
sick with COVID over the
oh,
over the holidays. It's just lingering and won't go away.
ugh, yeah. I couldn't tell if you sneezed or coughed, so but so so there are men, transgender men, that have given birth, and they feel like, it's the best of both worlds. They can still parent their own child, and have the equipment to have their own baby and have that experience giving birth. But then after their pregnancy, then they can go back to their male hormones and continue that process. And there's a few of men like that, trans men like that now. So it's kind of amazing. And one of the things that, I think, and I'm pretty sure Lona feels this way too, but I'm not positive. But and other people are saying it as well. But I kind of feel like it's part of the evolving of humans is getting rid of these labels, like the non-binary. You know, we don't have to be so defined, you know, where we are. And I think that there's definitely people like myself, like I said, I feel fully comfortable being female, and I always have. It's never been an issue or a question for me. But then there's so many people that don't feel comfortable within, their gender, but they identify as gay or lesbian, and maybe not transgender or non-binary. But this is where it's heading, because like you said,
Yeah.
more and more are kind of being open. But it's not a new thing. It's just more and more are feeling support because they're finding other people on social media or just online, more support groups and more people like them, so they realize they're not alone. They realize there's not something wrong with them.
Yeah, no, I
So
remember watching who's the Jenner,
oh
they
yeah.
had that. he had that show, the show, their own his own her own show,
Mhm.
and I remember that there was an old cross dresser on there, or
Mm.
trans woman that was, way goes way back. I mean, I know this
Yeah.
isn't a new thing. This isn't a new thing. It's been around
Mhm.
for quite some time. There's
Yeah.
always been folks that identify that way, and
Right.
didn't come out, and were, for obvious reasons,
Right.
it's dangerous for
Mm.
some of these folks, depending on the area that they live in,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
especially how they have to sometimes make money on the market and the sexual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Basically, turning tricks
Mhm.
and getting beat up that way, or
Right.
so. I mean, my sister has she works with that community quite a bit when she was living down here before she went to Sacramento and works for the
Mhm.
state now. But she was doing a lot of work in the HIV community and the AIDS
Yeah.
community, especially back when it was a big thing.
Mhm.
They've
Yeah.
gotten a little bit of control over it. Although I
Yeah.
heard there was a AIDS breakout somewhere, maybe in Minnesota or Missouri,
Mhm.
or someplace that starts with an M.
One of those M places, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but I know that I was like, an AIDS breakout. What the
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a
I
long
know.
time.
I know. Yeah, because HIV is no longer, a death sentence. It doesn't turn into AIDS. You're not gonna just go from HIV to AIDS to die. That
Yeah,
doesn't really happen anymore. Not in
and
this country.
they also don't have AZT anymore, which
AZT.
was a which was a toxic drug that was killing
Mm.
people.
Yeah,
uh,
terrible, terrible.
Part of that cocktail, and that was Fauci's first round. A
Right, right. Yeah, that's
little
another
bit of
rabbit
history.
hole.
Yeah, a
Yeah, I
little bit
know,
of
I
history
know.
for you guys, medical history. Um, so yeah, I mean, we're at 47 minutes. So why don't you go and let everybody know where they can find your book, and where they can find you, and if you
Yeah,
want,
yeah, thank
plug
you.
yourself.
Well, you can find my hypnotherapy website at hypnobreakthrough.com. And I'm all over social media with my hypnotherapy. It's Breakthrough Hypnotherapy. And they all have the same profile picture, the same logo. It says holistic deep mind healing, though, is what it says on the logo. But it's Breakthrough Hypnotherapy um, on all social media. And the book, if you put my name in the search bar of Amazon, that's easier than trying to put the title in there. So just Pamela Topjian or Pamela M Topjian, and and it's in on Kindle. It's on Kindle Unlimited also, and then it's paperback too.
Hmm.
So yeah, so you can
And
put
then
my name in there, and
and all of your links and everything will be in the show notes in the
great,
description. So I'll load
great,
all
thank
those
you.
up as well. Awesome. Well, Pamela, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show,
Thank you so
and
much for having me.
thanks for being a fan of this show. I
Absolutely.
definitely appreciate the support.
Yeah, yeah. So great. So great.
And
Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime if you got a show that you want me to come on, whatever you guys are doing. Did I ever go
Okay.
on Lona? Did I ever go on Lona's show, the recovery one, or do we? I don't know
I'm
if we
not
ever.
sure. We'd have to ask if you went on Recovery Soul Food. You should, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it ever made it back around, because I know we were supposed to.
Hmm.
She came on. He came on mine, and then I was supposed to go on that one. But dude, I've been on so many shows. I can't remember
Yeah.
if I did or not.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll ask. I'll ask him if you have been yet, or just go through the show anyway and see. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
recall. I know that he was on yours.
yeah,
I don't know if you were on either one of his, but yeah.
yeah. I don't. Yeah, I can't remember. I don't think so though. I don't think it ever
Okay.
made it back around. But yeah, we'll have to revisit that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome,
absolutely.
Pamela. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming
Okay.
on the show. Thank you for giving me your time. And I
My
definitely
pleasure.
appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, Pamela.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Well, there you go. That's definitely interesting hypnotherapy. I tried it for, like I said, I tried it for 15 minutes, and I think I was just, like she said, I was just thinking too much. Probably. I definitely don't like to. I don't like to not feel like I'm in control of something. So that probably had a lot to do with it. But all the links and everything else will be in the description when this comes out. And yeah, so not much else to say. Keep it 100, stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.